we cannot possibly end the section on hospital fixed costs and the dilemma that fixed costs present to hospitals without a little bit of discussion on operating leverage. So operating leverage, or OL, is a financial concept that measures the proportion of fixed costs in a company's hospital's cost structure. So it indicates how change in sales volume will affect a company's operating income due to the presence of fixed costs in its overall costs or cost structure. So a higher operating leverage, a large OL, means the more a company's profits can increase with additional sales, because fixed costs remains the same and constant as sales increase. A tertiary care hospital with high operating leverage will see a more significant impact on profitability from changes in patient demand or volume. So the patient volume increases, the hospital can spread its fixed costs over a larger number of patients, thus widening its fixed cost base, potentially increasing profitability. In the same vein, however, high operating leverage also means higher risk, business risk, meaning if the patient volume decreases, the hospital still incurs the same fixed costs, leading to financial strain. Also, in the context of operating risk and business risk, operating leverage, and business risk, you will hear the term contribution margin. And in this context, this means basically the amount remaining from the sales revenue after deducting variable costs. So that margin, overall sales revenue minus variable costs, is the contribution margin, which basically is the amount that is available to the company, hospital, to cover the fixed costs for generating profit. So, in a hospital, labor and supplies, which clearly seem variable in the long run, typically account for over half, 50 or 60% of the total operating expenses, right? And then direct supplies, materials, etc., represent an additional 10 to 15%. Now, superficially, it looks like this high variable cost component suggests that hospital expenses are quite sensitive to changes in patient volume, right? So the costs, because they are only seemingly variable, are not sensitive to patient volume, right? So that what I mean to say is that if a bed day can be saved without any reduction in revenue, then hospital profitability would improve. Unfortunately, in practice, that does not happen because much of the seemingly variable costs are relatively fixed in the medium to long run, thereby making it almost impossible to generate true cost savings. Also, one of the reasons why a lot of these cost measures that hospitals undertake is just an illusion, and we'll come to it when we get to the section on costing. Nursing, prima facie, may seem like an area again where labor costs can potentially be directly related to patient volume. But even here, it is insensitive to modest volume changes and is at best characterized as a modestly semi-variable cost, with potential savings from reduced patient volume can be described by a mathematical step function. So what does all of this mean? The high fixed costs structure of hospitals and the predominance of what you can call joint costs, because they're not fixed, the variable costs behave like they are fixed or semi-fixed in the medium to long run, mean that truly variable costs can be captured by small or incremental cost reduction strategies. This is why hospitals have no incentive to keep populations healthy, because it can only gain the way they're structured, and because of the operating leverage, they can only gain when you and I have a sentinel event, a heart attack or a hip fracture or another chronic condition. And besides this, the payment models, which we will see a little later, are such that both hospitals and doctors get paid for doing more. And therefore, it accentuates this problem. So, in conclusion, hospitals, given the way they are financed, structured, operated, and incentivized, has no option but to widen the fixed cost base, widen its revenue base, because it's getting paid for doing more, not getting paid for doing better.